Well, I've resumed my game of Third World War, Battle for Germany. Got through the third turn, just about to start the fourth turn. Highlights of the last turn is Denmark has finally fallen, with the siege of Copenhagen being completed. Also, heavy fighting in Hamburg. And it was a lucky die roll, but they got an exchange result, the Soviets did, and was able to take Hamburg. That opens up this northern front and creates new problems for NATO in this sector that seemed to be stabilized. Down in the southern part, in the center, not a lot changed. In the southern part of the front, the second echelon troops have begun to make their presence felt. More probing action, trying to get around and isolate Munich. Soviets were able to push into the woods here, but judicious NATO counterattacks forced them out with heavy Soviet disruptions, and so the front has been sort of stabilized. There's a significant presence still in Munich, but had to create some space for this West German division to recover some disruption and be able to be used in the future. It was beat up pretty badly in some of the earlier attacks. In the center here, near Würzburg, the Soviets were able to penetrate into, I think it was into this hex here, and got pretty close to the Rhine. Dangerous situation for NATO. They were forced to pull a lot of 5th Corps units out of the line, create a heavy attack, which was successful, destroyed 2 divisions of Soviets, and so that was useful. That was a good result for them. Took some disruption along the way, but was able to get back into the line and be able to hold the center here. Soviets are close to the Rhine, but again, in the center, not a whole lot of striking power to hit back. Soviets have concentrated most of their efforts in the south and in the north. And so that's the situation here in the center part. Down in the Balkans, which is only represented in a small way in the battle for Germany. It represented a much larger capacity in southern front, but I don't have the table space for the map. So in Croatia, the Soviets continue to push the Italians back and the remnants of the Yugoslavian army back, almost out of Yugoslavia. They're getting to the borders of Slovenia, but haven't quite been able to complete the efforts, and the Italians have been able to restabilize the line. So this is kind of reduced back down to a stalemate. In the air war, Soviets took some losses in the air war. NATO lost a grand total of 3 units up in the central part of the front, the western front. Southwestern front, they lost 1 fighter unit. So did the Soviets. Soviets in the Western Front, they did lose 5 aircraft. These are losses the Soviets cannot afford. I suspect from this point onwards, NATO is going to be able to leverage, finally, its air power to bring the creeping advance here in the battle for Germany to a halt and maybe begin to turn the tables. As far as victory points go, I'd have to recalculate them to be sure. Denmark is surrendered. I need to remove that guy out of there. Denmark's out of the fight, and that's going to bring it up to, I believe, 60 victory points at present. So not enough for Soviets to say, hey, do you want to cry uncle yet? I don't think NATO is ready to cry uncle yet. So this is going to continue a little bit longer, but let's see what NATO air power can do. Because again, this was a good turn for NATO. In terms of what they were able to achieve in their own deep strikes, NATO is going to lose 1 more unit from ground attacks on their air bases. So we'll have to figure out what that is at the start of the next turn. The Soviets are going to have 3 grounded units, none destroyed, and there was none of that going on in the southwestern sector. So the Soviets are going to get a MiG-23 and a MiG-27 in play. Next turn, the NATO is going to get an F-16, A-10. Those are not balancing reinforcements. The F-16 is better than the MiG-23, and the A-10 is more capable than the Su-27, at least for ground support. So that is the situation going into turn 4. Battle for Germany. Lots of fun with this one, and real tense situation. I kind of feel like NATO has the capability here to grind down the Soviets, because this is really the second echelon of the Soviets are in the line now, so there's not a whole lot of heavy hitters coming in future turns for the Soviets. So if NATO can just kind of hold this line, grind down the Soviets, might be able to start pick them off and begin to create some isolation situations and destroy some army groups. That's really what needs to happen for them to be able to turn the tide and win this game. What the Soviets really got to be careful about, I think, at this point is Polish losses are at 9 points. I think they're 3 points away from being shaken, which means the Polish units are vulnerable to not being able to be used in an offensive capacity. So they got to be careful with their allies. They have taken significant Polish casualties and also Czechoslovakian casualties. So that is something that NATO should be mindful of and maybe try to target some of those units. If they can force those units out of the line, the situation could have a bit of a turnabout. So that is what we're looking at going into turn 4. I think the game can last 8 turns. I am intrigued. I'm curious, with the stalemate situation here, it does make me wonder about the use of tactical nuclear weapons. And I'll have to read up on the rules on how that works. I've never really used them in this system. But if I'm the Soviet player, I'm in a situation here where I really need to create a breakthrough, and I'm so close to being able to finally break the back of NATO, but haven't been able to quite do that. The use of tactical nuclear weapons is attractive. One last thing I should say, what happened up here in the north part of Germany is the U.S. 1st Cavalry Division was used to force a Soviet armored division out of a dangerous position. They were holding this particular city, Oldenburg, creating making life difficult on this stack of mixed units. And so combined with some British units have really taken losses. Almost always it's been in an exchange result. And so there's been heavy British losses in this, but they were able to force that Soviet unit out without losses, and then use of the airborne, or I should say the attack helicopters, British attack helicopters and French attack helicopters. One was here, and there's a whole stack of 3 air mobile brigades from the Soviets, and these guys are dangerous because they can slip around and just start to take over these northern ports and cities and create some surrounded situations. It makes it difficult for NATO to hold this line in the north. NATO was able to destroy all of those units, and that was a big time, very, very useful result. It was worth, I think, the loss of those 2 British units. They lost a British armored division and a British attack helicopter brigade. But the result of that, losing all 3 of those air mobile brigades, I think really helps NATO. So we'll see how that impacts the game going forward.